humanity and why the ETs would want something to do with us. And these younger and younger people get more and more open-minded to this stuff. You know, they get more and more, like Mary mentioned, the indigo children and the prescience of these kids and the things that they can pick up on. And, you know, people really put down millennials on the negative end, that a lot of them live with their parents. They're not as likely to go out and get married or get a job or have a family. They're kind of lazy, you could almost say sometimes, or, you know, comparatively. But on the positive side, my observation and from studying this is that millennials are incredibly emotionally intelligent. They can tell you about their feelings. I mean, a 25-year-old millennial or 30-year-old millennial can tell you stuff about who they are as a person and what they've struggled with in way clearer terms and more accurate terms than I could at that age. I mean, it took me till my 40s till I could really do that stuff. So I think what Mary is getting at is going to be really important, because these younger and younger generations and the whole autism and Asperger's aspect of it, what's going on with these generations, what are they bringing to society that we're missing? And this is a taboo topic because mainstream media does not like this. This is like woo-woo stuff, you know, but it's the fourth turning is so well studied, and he goes back into history. It's very heavy on historical occurrences that shaped these generations.
It is interesting, and it's something we don't hear much about, so I'm really grateful that you've brought this to our roundtable. Mary, have you heard of studies that talk about incidences of UFO abductions by these generations, you know, millennials, Generation X and such? Are some generations more prone than others?
Well, what I'm going to be speaking about is actually what I call a young 9-year-old who has her own experiences. The interesting thing is with the children is that they're not fearful of their interactions, most of them. They're far more comfortable with the concept that they are from somewhere else, or they've got a connection to these galactic beings. They're quite peaceful about that. Their problem is planet Earth and the limited way that we understand reality. I was just about an hour ago talking to an 8-year-old that was telling me that he sees orbs, he has someone talking to him in his head, that he sees energy. He explains that he sees the color auras around people. He also says that mushrooms communicate with him and other plants and animals. Now, we're talking about an 8-year-old here that's trying to manage his multidimensional self in a third-dimensional consensus reality that says none of this exists. And his mother's biggest problem is how can she support him so he doesn't shut down from his awareness, because she also sees things, experiences things, the whole family does. But her main issue is, how can I best support my son, because this is part of his reality. And this is really important now, because the new generations that I'm going to talk about not only see multidimensionally, they are seeing beings. They are seeing light beings or crystalline or feline beings, or a whole range of intelligences, or just purely frequencies. I mean, one of the things I said to him is, what one of the beings you see? And I said, what does it look like? And he went, well, it's all fuzzy. It's like, I said, like energy, like a kind of energy. He said, yes. So it didn't even have a form. It was just pure energy and consciousness. So when I talk about how things are going to change, this is the new generation of human that is far more expanded in its multidimensional awareness, connected to the, if you like, the quantum hologram of consciousness, or what, is our multidimensional essence, or soul, or spirit, or whatever name you want to give it. So for me, that's where we are, and that's where we are going as a species, which is a completely different one from where I was born, where you'd be calling me the prophet, or which you can see that in another way. So that in fact, what you've led into, Ginger, is the galactic program, which is about us and how we are really changing from a very much programmed 3D understanding of our reality to a multidimensional awareness that we're all actually in the latest into mainstream is all consciousness, whether, you know, all the information we get about near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, healing, shamanic experiences, people taking ayahuasca, etc. We are now expanding our awareness, and it's becoming more and more mainstream. It needs to, because these children don't need any of that for this to happen for them. They are being born like that. So I'm going to tell a little bit of a case study of a 9-year-old in a minute that will actually explain where they're coming from.
Fantastic. Any other comments about generations, thoughts about Ginger's very thought-provoking article, which I had, by the way, had never heard of. So again, thanks for bringing that to consciousness, because by bringing it to consciousness, we can have reasonable debate and share our ideas.
Real quick, since there's some baby boomers in the panel here, I don't want you guys to feel like there's so much positive about what the baby boomers have brought to the table, and they brought a lot of vision and a lot of, like, you look at all of the gold standards for music and film and art and, you know, just social consciousness raising, that I could take you through like the whole thing, but baby boomers being a very positive generation who brought a lot of positive things. And then on the negative side, you know, some of the negative things. So the way Neil Howe describes these generations, each one brought something to the table. I mean, on the positive side, baby boomers have all this vision, but on the negative side, they want to tell other people how they should think. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like a positive and a negative.
I remember, although I can't tell you the date, but it was only a few years ago that the statistic was published that the millennials outnumbered the baby boomers for the first time, because, of course, the baby boomers are aging and dying, and the millennials are up and coming. So
because the baby boomers had so many kids, you know, that makes the millennials an even larger generation.
And I'm always nice to younger people of all ages, because odds are one of them or their friends is going to be attending to me and my needs in the old folks' home at some point. So I want to get good relationships going, you know.
People who are into the kind of topics that we're into are sort of ageless in terms of we can connect with anybody who's into these topics. And
well, that's true. That is true.
Especially Eugene.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate that. Hey, I'm about to introduce our next article bringer, who is Preston, and I'm going to play around right here with my virtual background. I have got our show banner, which has all our names on it, and I just want to, here we go. It can be alarming to make these kinds of changes mid-show, but I think it's a good time. We're about halfway through. Preston, what have you got for us? Preston Dennett, everyone in Viewerland.
Thanks, Jean. Yeah, I thought a little bit about this. I've written quite a number of UFO articles and tried to stay current with the situation. I'm thinking, well, what do I want to talk about tonight? This is such a wonderful opportunity. And what came to my mind was an article I wrote for Perihelion magazine a year or two ago, called Mining Data on UFOs. And the reason I chose that is because when I Googled it, I saw that there was another recent case of a UFO hovering over a mine. I believe this is the Paraburdoo mine in Australia, which does have a number of cases. In fact, I've collected about 20 cases where UFOs are not only hovering over mines, but landing next to them. There are humanoids seen in some cases. So that's what this article is about. I'm going to give you a slightly abridged version that covers a couple of cases, because I think this is a really important aspect that just hasn't broken into, you know, the mainstream media, and it should. So here we go. It's called Mining Data on UFOs. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding the UFO phenomenon is, why are they here? Most researchers agree that there are probably many reasons. The most popular theory by far is that UFOs are scientists and tourists here only to study and observe. However, the ET agenda appears to include a wide variety of goals. One reason that has been raised to account for UFOs' interest in planet Earth is mining. One case I'd like to talk about is the Brush Creek titanium mine. In 1953, one of the world's most unusual UFO mine encounters took place outside a small, isolated Northern California town called Brush Creek. Today, it remains a classic case in UFO literature. The entire ordeal revolves around two titanium miners, John Black and John Van Allen, who had a series of encounters while working at their mine. In early 1953, both Black and Van Allen observed a, quote, metallic saucer hover above the area of the mine. Over the next few weeks, the object returned on 4 separate occasions. On April 20th, their concern mounted when Black saw the craft again from a distance of about a quarter mile. It was obvious to the witnesses that the UFO had a strong interest in their mine. Exactly 1 month later, at 6:30 p.m. on May 20th, Black was returning to the mine when he saw the now familiar saucer rise up from the sandbar at the junction of Marble and Jordan Creeks. The craft quickly took off towards the east and disappeared. On inspecting the area, Black found several small 5-inch footprints. Then exactly 1 month later, again, on June 20th, Black approached the junction of the two creeks when he saw what he thought was a small child with a bucket. At that point, he saw the large saucer landed nearby on the sandbar. Black examined the figure, which he said appeared to be a small man wearing green pants, unusual shoes, a jacket, and a green cap. He was very pale and had black hair. Says Black, quote, he looked like someone who had never been out in the sun much. Black watched as the man scooped up water with an unusual cone-shaped bucket. Black had approached to about 40 feet when the little man heard him and quickly entered a small metallic saucer that was landed on the sandbar. At that point, the craft took off quickly and in total silence, leaving him amazed. Somewhat concerned, he contacted Brush Creek Sheriff Fred Preston and jokingly asked him if it was open season on spacemen. The sheriff remained serious and said, I told them they'd better grab it next time so they'll have something to back up their story. Preston told them he couldn't give them permission to shoot. He did, however, contact the Air Force. One of the strangest events in UFO history. Because the saucer had appeared on April 20th, May 20th, and June 20th, everyone was predicting a July 20th landing. More than 200 people arrived on the scene with cameras. Residents of Brush Creek, newspaper reporters, cameramen, saucer enthusiasts all converged on the scene. Snack bars and chairs were set up. It was a circus-like performance. Unfortunately, it was a total bust. The expected UFO did not arrive, and the Brush Creek ordeal came to a sudden close. However, the case has never been solved. The miners were well respected, and their testimony was backed up by Vi Belcher, owner of the local store, who said that they were not drinking men. The account was investigated in depth by researchers Gray Barker and Paul Spade, both of who were actually jailed by the Brush Creek Sheriff Station when they tried to conduct a stakeout for the saucer. Both came away convinced of the veracity of the case. So yeah, there are many other cases like this. I just want to cover one other one, which I think is really profound. It took place at the Carnes City uranium mine. Late one evening in the summer of 1971, Conoco Oil Company Michael Harvey was working the night shift at the 85-acre open pit uranium mine located west of Carnes City, Texas. He and a half dozen other employees were operating Caterpillar 657B earth movers and had reached a depth of 210 feet when suddenly, says Harvey, the entire pit lit up as if it was daylight. Harvey and all the other workers immediately stopped working and looked up to see a massive, blinding white light directly over the mine. Says Harvey, quote, the light was so bright that I had to squint because it hurt my eyes. I remember hearing a high-pitched hissing noise, and the hair on my arm stood on end. I was so scared, I fell to the ground and started praying. The light was too bright to look at. The workers were frozen in fear for a few minutes until suddenly the lights began to dim. Only then could Harvey and the other workers see the source of the light. What I saw amazed me, he said. The object was round, and the bright light was coming from the center of the bottom of the UFO around the perimeter of the craft were hundreds of pen-light-sized light beams that alternated in all colors of the spectrum. Harvey was struck by the beam's similarity to lasers. As he and the others watched, the object rose slowly upward for about 10 seconds and then darted straight up and disappeared. Harvey and his coworkers were deeply traumatized by the incident. Says Harvey, "I was crying and shaking, and so was everyone else." When the night shift workers arrived, Harvey and the others told them what they had seen. The new shift was skeptical and ridiculed the witnesses mercilessly. But we got the last laugh, said Harvey. This is how we proved it actually happened. Says Harvey, and I'm quoting, "There's a vein of uranium ore that runs from West Texas to almost Texarkana, Texas. When determining where to place the mine, the following steps are accomplished. A geologist with a Geiger counter flies over the area and finds the highest radiation reading. Drilling trucks are sent out and core samples are drilled to determine the highest concentration of uranium ore. When this incident happened, we were about 2 feet away from a layer of hard rock called the tap rock that lied directly on top of the uranium ore. 2 days after this incident, the tap rock was removed to expose the uranium ore. We were astounded to find that the uranium ore was now a chalky white substance that had no radioactivity at all. There was a 250-foot diameter circle of this chalky material in the center of the pit. Outside this circle, the uranium ore was still as potent as before the incident. Core samples don't lie. This chalky material was uranium before this incident. There are many other incidents like this. As these cases show, some UFO occupants are apparently geologists conducting multiple mining operations. And the fact that these UFOs visit these locations on repeated occasions reveals not only their strong interest in mines, but also that they are actively engaged in some type of agenda that involves these mines. So these types of cases provide compelling evidence of UFO reality. They also have the potential to reveal how UFOs might use their technology to extract geological materials and what types of materials they might be interested in. And finally, it is likely that mines are disproportionately more likely to be visited by UFOs than other mundane areas. Therefore, a UFO stakeout of mines might have the potential to allow for repeated predicted observations of UFOs engaged in low-level activity, which is the perfect opportunity for cutting live-edge fieldwork. So that's my article. I'm pretty excited about it because I think it really is solid evidence of UFO reality. If they're really interested in all these mines, copper mines, iron mines, diamond mines, uranium mines, it shows that we're dealing with actual beings who do pilot physical craft and are probably coming from other planets like us.
Well said. Well done. What do people think? Mary?
Right. Fascinating, Preston. I had no idea that was of an interest. It makes me recall a little bit about the Army and Air Force bases where the craft are seen above the base and they turn off the nuclear warheads and reprogram and all that kind of stuff. I'm wondering whether or not this is a way of surveying what we're up to in terms of the mining that we're doing, what we're doing to the planet. Whether or not they're also needing some of those particular elements for whatever they're doing. I mean, that's always possible, of course, as well. What I'd be interested in is the ones that experienced this or saw the light or were around at the time of this. It would be interesting if they had any subconscious recall of anything else going on. In other words, a pickup. Because I know, will be aware that many people who see UFOs and they think they've just been watching them for a little while or a few minutes, take some pictures and think nothing else is happening. Often as not, there's either a pickup or a download to the individual that's seeing them. So for me, I'd be quite interested to see if there was any missing time thing or whether or not they, had any hypnosis to find out if anything else happened. That's what would intrigue me with this as well, because for me it would be wonderful if there was a way of understanding why these intelligences are particularly interested in certain minerals or whatever. As I say, whether they're just watching us and monitoring what we're doing, or whether or not they actually need those particular elements is quite fascinating.
Or perhaps some of each.
Could be both, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I found no evidence of people having contact before or after this or connected to it in any way. There is evidence where these objects are physically affecting the mines. Arizona is the leading producer of copper in the United States. Many of their mines have been visited, and some have had objects hover right over the copper smelting plant and send down not only beams of light, but little probes into it. So perhaps they're measuring our level of pollution. That would make sense to me. We don't have proof that they're actually taking stuff. They did kind of turn that uranium mine into chalk. That could be for our own protection. But who knows if they actually even need that. It seems kind of strange that they would need our minerals, but we're kind of stuck with the cases. It's good evidence cases, though.
Any thoughts there, Ginger?
So I also was not aware of there being visitations to mines, but it does bring to mind the military and nuclear plant visitings, like Rendlesham.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing we see. UFOs do appear to be interested in nuclear mines, nuclear stations, anything technological, really. There's a bunch of what we would call UFO attractors. Schoolyards are one of them. They're attracted to elementary schools and high schools, graveyards, believe it or not, prisons, Air Force bases of all kinds, airports. There's a long list.
Both the cases you mentioned are lesser known. In the Brush Creek incident, did you say the miners expected the craft to come back?
Yeah, it came on the same day, 3 months in a row. So that was a pretty strong pattern there that it was exerting. Didn't come back the next time.
Maybe because a crowd had gathered.
Could be, but yeah, I was struck by how universal this is. I mean, there are mines up all across the United States. South America, there were cases. There's cases in Africa, Australia, all over the world.
Well, what sprang to my mind was the association with the Sumerian texts, which I've been looking into lately.
Yeah.
Again, the Sumerian creation myth for human beings being that our progenitors came from another solar system that needed gold to replenish its atmosphere somehow. And they were mining monoatomic gold out of Earth and sending it home. It was too little too late, apparently, but that evidence of gold mining, ancient gold mining in South Africa, as is being researched by Michael Tellinger and others, it's opening a whole new door on our understanding of human origin, where we came from. And it certainly looks as if ETs are interested in mining. And, I've been writing a lot lately about science and futurism. This is not even science fiction anymore. Science tech is heading toward mining asteroids. Companies around the world are positioning themselves to either build their own satellites with robots on them. The Japanese are leading this research. They've landed a probe on a moving asteroid hurtling through space, and they want to deploy little hopping robots from a carrier robot that can make mineral assays, scoop up bits of mineral and take it back. Well, in case of Japan, they want it back to Japan so they can analyze asteroids to see if they're worth mining. So maybe these ETs treat Earth as a very mineral-rich resource and a nice place to bring the kids, while you're here. In other words, we'll go fishing and these guys will go mining while we're here on Earth. I don't know. This is really fascinating, though. I'm glad you brought this up, Preston, because I had not heard of this. This is amazing. Any final thoughts?
Doesn't get near enough attention, but yeah, thanks very much. I think it's important.
Yeah. Well, Mary, what have you got for us?
Well, you did say something that I'm passionate about, and I'm passionate about what I believe is a program of upgrading of consciousness on the planet. And the reason that I came to this conclusion that what are appearing to be dysfunctions in our new generations what was interesting about that for me was when I was talking to experiencers that were parents, and they would talk about, you know, their parents or their grandparents interested in UFOs or being a little bit more aware, maybe a bit more psychic, a bit more intuitive. And then they were saying, but now I've got a child that's autistic, or I've got a child that's ADHD, or I've got a child that's got Asperger's or dyslexia. And I started to ponder that and say, well, what is that saying? If in fact we're being upgraded, so why are we having these children that are so very different? And we're struggling to, you know, get them to interact. We're struggling to educate them and what have you, unless they're actually not dysfunctional, and it's us, the old models, that are dysfunctional. And where I'm heading with this is what a 9-year-old was talking about, our 3D education, and how that shuts us down from being all that we can be. So I'm going to, the stories in my book, my second book, The New Human, Awakening to Our Cosmic Heritage. And this is a young girl that I was introduced to by a mother, because the mother had been watching some of my presentations where there was those that have contact starting to speak what we call light languages or star languages, completely spontaneously, either because they start learning healing or they're having interactions, then suddenly this is triggered and they may write symbols. They may in fact use those symbols for healing as well, or scripts, or unusual artwork, or bringing in music. These are all the expressions of contact. So this is how the mother contacted me, because they live in Scandinavia, and her 9-year-old, she showed her 9-year-old this because her 9-year-old was speaking these languages, these strange languages. So this is the short version, the excerpt that I'm going to read to you. Sophia, I call Kathy's mother, who's 9, and said, "I can heal water." The mother wrote to me this: "I live in Northern Europe and have 4 children. At my first pregnancy, a voice told me my children were not mine. They would only come through me. These children belonged to no one. Until recently, I didn't even know they were extraterrestrials. My daughter Kathy is 9 years old. Occasionally, she gets important messages in ET languages. She says they're important. I showed her your presentation where a girl does healing and writes in several ET languages. My daughter responded with joy and excitement. She knows what I've written. I'll attach one of my daughter's writings. Kathy's the special girl who finds the conventional world and rules very difficult. She asks why she isn't allowed to do things her own way. She has healing abilities and dictated some healing words in an ET language to purify water. I noticed the water actually tasted differently afterwards. Kathy says the languages are from a place somewhere outside of the universe. Everything is divided into 3 parts: dayland, eveningland, and nightland. In dayland does the light live. Eveningland is blue, where they fuse together. That's where her friends are from. The other side is black, nightland, where we are. Kathy has helpers who guide and teach her. One of the beings is called Emoke. She's a female and is blue, and there is no hair or ears. Her eyes are like human eyes, but much bigger. The green being is male. She has a helper from dayland dimensions she's got, who helps her understand what her guides tell her. Kathy says, my friends are here all the time. They have given her access to 7 books, not real books, but this is the best way to describe them. The red book is about creation and our origins. The brown one is about different planets and the life there. The green one is about nature and how we can make contact with plants and animals and how we understand nature. The dark green one is about the body and how it really works and how to get it to evolve. The blue book is about light and truth. The red-brown book, she says she can't open yet because a dragon took the key from her sometime in the 1700s. And the black book is about darkness and evil. All the books contain important information. The black book is dangerous. We all originate from dayland. She doesn't want to use the word God, as she says it's misused. She's calling it a being in daylight, an over-terrestrial, where we all originate. It's not a man or a woman. It has no gender. The being showed the seed of light and love only. It's where the light and the angels live. Kathy's mission on Earth, and this is where I talked to her over an interview of Skype with a mother and an interpreter. Sophia, her mother, said, Kathy told me her purpose here on Earth. She said it's to get her family to wake up, protect her little brother because he's important for humanity. He will become her teacher when he grows up, as he will help humanity wake up. So I asked Mary, what do you need to understand from the beings you're in contact with? Kathy responded, they want us to wake up and see reality as it is and understand how powerful we really are. Some people from dayland and eveningland will come here to help humanity with the awakening. It's very dangerous to come here to help because memories can be deleted at birth, and some destroyed by society and education, drink, and drugs. Those who come here are aware of the dangers and still want to come and help. We are not awake yet. So I asked, how can we wake up? Kathy said, we have to increase our energy as we don't have the energy required. It's stolen from us. How can we protect our energy? I asked. Don't get angry about small things, she said. Don't speak on mobile phones for a long time. Don't eat white sugar. No TV, microwaves or wireless internet. At present, we only have 0.5% energy. We need 1.5%. And about school, she said, there's nothing good about this system. Children are programmed. The teachers just push the keys. They contain the learning. They don't allow the children to expand it and to finish because we have to stop and do something else. The information is set and is rigid at school. The school programs are like a virus. It destroys what we have inside us. And when we, like the computer, is old, when we grow up, we will be finished. It extinguishes the light inside us when we're infected with this virus. It extinguishes the light. The light they infected us with the virus, and it extinguishes that inner light because we lose the information we had at the beginning. Because education is only one of the methods that causes this. Our inner core can be destroyed by too much stress, facing multiple tasks, less sleep, more anxiety. It means we can be deliberately destroyed. The same is happening to animals and nature. Everything is being stressed out. It's important to care for nature and treat animals as well. Adults have small ears. They don't hear the messages we're trying to tell them. Adults don't want to hear what the star kids have to say. They're too stressed out. It interferes with the reality that adults live in. So Sophia is Kathy's mother, is a teacher, and she told me that an autistic boy of Kathy's school came and spoke with her. He told her that his own mother was upset when he tried to tell her he saw spirits. He wanted to tell Sophia, Kathy's mum, about it too. She asked, why did he choose to tell her instead? And he told her it was because of the energy in her face. Sophia deduced this is the way he knew it was safe to tell her. He also told her there's a bubble that protects sorry, I've missed that. He also told there was a bubble protecting him, but when he gets close to wireless internet, his bubble bursts, and it's devastating to us how it affects our bodies. So, how to create a new reality. There are 5 children like me at the school. School is boring. What they teach is wrong. They program you. We can do anything we desire. When children play using their imagination, it's not just imagination. It stops them making a reality. They are imagining. What they can imagine can be a reality. We say it's not possible, but everything is possible. We need to believe it. We need to have this capacity. So I ask, when will we rediscover what we can do and achieve our full potential? It's difficult, Kathy says, because first of all, we don't believe it. Then if we believe, we still have doubts. It stops us. We have to be at the point within ourselves to get in touch with our real truth in order to achieve this. There is a certain time we will achieve it. And if one person does this, it will spread to other people. And this is the way it will start. But what time, I can't tell you. For star children like herself, this is why they have come to our planet, to show us the way. The ones to start the process of helping the rest to wake up. Kathy said she's from Evening Land, and there they are. They've come to help humanity evolve. When her purpose is accomplished, she will go back to Dayland. We have all been in Dayland because we want to have more experiences when we come here. The beings contact her do not live on another planet. They are located at the edge of the universe in the white light. She said something important is going to happen in the next 5 years. The parents have to listen to us. We need to educate the parents. And finally, she says here, the orbs and balls of light, the blue light orb sent to protect us. My little brother has a blue orb that protects him. You said your little brother will be a teacher. In what way? We will be homeschooled and it will contain true knowledge. What do your guides teach you? They're teaching me, Kathy said, different knowledge so I can teach adults. The danger is that it can be lost. Then people will get confused and lost by making fun of the star children and not believing them. How many star children are there? And she said 40 to 50% of people out of 100, but many get lost and only 20% will remember who they are. Why don't they listen? So there you are. That's one 9-year-old explaining her reality and how she understands the source, the universal source, God, as a terrestrial, over terrestrial, and that we all come from there, but we've also left it to experience. So what would you like to say about that?
Well, I have to say, first of all, it reminds me of Dolores Cannon's waves of star seeds. Anybody want to spiff on that? Anybody know what I'm talking about here?
Well, I certainly do, because Dolores Cannon was a friend of mine.
Please go on.
Dolores came to my groups several times when I was in Perth in Western Australia and talked to my experiencer groups. We also spoke at similar conferences. So a lot of her material ties in with mine, because what I need to stress here, though, is that Dolores's information came most of the time from hypnosis, whereas mine not only comes from hypnosis, but with the children, there's no hypnosis involved. It is all conscious recall. And that's really significant, because a lot of that I found is for a lot of people, that's gives it even more of a tangibility, because it wasn't through an altered state that they came out with the information. So with the children and the stories that I tell in there, it is literally all conscious memory, right up to the teenagers that I've spoken to. But the adults, some of it may be conscious, some of it actually may be gained through hypnosis, which I use as well to help people understand their experiences and understand their connection to these beings. Often in an altered state, they will then explore that to give themselves more understanding and answers as to why they're having experiences.
Have you collected data information from anyone else talking about something big happening in 5 years? That's intriguing.
I will tell you, absolutely. And this is from people coming from all different parts of the globe that will write to me and say they're getting visions, or they have this knowing or this sense that some event is going to occur, most likely in the near future, not necessarily in the distant future either. Some of them feel anxious about it. Some of them feel almost urgent. There's an urgency with it, almost like there's something that they have to do to prepare for this. So what that is, we don't know. Many are talking about a new earth. Others are talking about an event. One of the interesting ones is that I find very significant for me and resonates is something Dr. Lena Olson, a molecular biologist who's an experiencer in Sweden, she said that she was told that we're separating out into two frequencies, the low frequency people that will stay in 3D and the higher frequency people that will actually go and move to another level of awareness. So maybe it's something to do around this kind of consciousness. I think it's anyone's guess, and all I can say is, trust your own resonance to what feels right for you. But certainly the sense something big is going to occur that will shift awareness and shift consciousness seems to be a very strong theme.
It does indeed. Ginger, what's your take on all this?
So I think that Mary's work is very important, and I find it fascinating. Kudos to you, Mary, for doing this kind of work. Otherwise, we wouldn't know anything. I mean, how would we know about this? I love the idea of kids like Kathy, and I wish I could. It makes me wish I could meet, a star child. Gosh, there's just so many questions. Do you, Mary, think that everyone is here, and from your research, from talking to these kids, as we've come from somewhere else and then forgotten, or only certain people are here to help heal the actual humans that originated here, or what?
That's a good multiple question, really. What I do believe now is, even though we're the older models, as I call it, of planet Earth, I believe we have within us what Kathy was saying, that everyone has the potential to be this amazing multidimensional being, that just some of us have been switched off a little bit more through our education, and our programming is limited us accessing that. And many are waking up to that now through, I've talked to some adults that had no belief in anything particular, didn't even believe in UFOs or whatever, would have a significant wake-up call, a catalyst, whether it was seeing a UFO or a shamanic experience, and all of a sudden they're aware more of their multidimensional nature, but also their connection to these intelligences. They'll say, I got a sense that I'm connected to the Pleiades or Arcturus or whatever, a real sense of their genetic heritage. The sense is from the children that they've come here to help. And when you get, 6 or 7 year olds tell you, I mean, there was one I particularly wanted to mention, that he was about 10, saying this is his first Earth incarnation. He comes from a planet where he was a blue being. He actually drew the blue being that he was. He said, my mother has had multiple Earth incarnations, but this is my first. I am a center seed to connect to the Earth. I'm going to be helping with pollution, was his mission. I talked to one 8-year-old that told me that he's connected to the mantis beings, that they are his ancestors. And interestingly, he said that not only does he go up on the craft and gets taught things, sometimes he evaporates. He explained his essence, evaporates into the mantid form to do a task and then come back to his human form. So he's so connected that he sometimes goes into his non-human form for a time. This is the new ones. The new ones coming in, many of them are aware of their heritage, whether they've come from a planet in this solar system or whether or not they've come interdimensionally. One 8-year-old is explaining to me that he can go interdimensionally to other planets. He says he just needs to know their mathematical number, and he is able then to access those planets through that frequency. This is the kind of awareness I'm talking about. It's way beyond what the rest of us have even begun to access, or at least most of us, or we still think it's in the realms of science fiction. These children will tell you about their lives on other planets, who they were connected to. I remember one grandmother saying, I think it was her grandson or granddaughter was saying, do you remember when we were on that water planet together? And explaining, don't you remember? So this kind of thing is very much their reality. And this is when Kathy was saying the problem is with schools, is that as soon as you go into a school, she said, they program you out of your light, was what she was saying. What she meant was your inner knowing, your inner awareness, your inner understanding. And this is why she said, it's better if you don't go to traditional schools, because this is what happens. So that, this is important.
And isn't it interesting that homeschooling is one, I've read that homeschooling is one of the things that'll land you on the Department of Homeland Security's suspected terrorist list. I've written an article about it, that in other words, the state wants to have control of schooling, of education. And I knew when I was in school, it was a mind killer. I think a lot of people do without really understanding just how it beats out the creativity. And of course, the whole model of Western education came from a Yale student who basically went over as an intern, an undergraduate, was sent over to then Prussia to look at how they were doing education. And Prussia was cranking out two kinds of graduates to join factories and graduates to join the military. And this is where the notion of sitting pupils in straight rows facing one speaker has come from, this kind of training. And we've had presidents talk about this to educators over the decades, that the purpose of education switched somewhere along the way from real education to training to join the workforce. And I've written a lot about Common Core. Common Core is rotten education. There are article that you brought, Mary, that I'm going to be quiet and think about it. Preston, what do you think? What's your response to all this?
First of all, thanks, Mary. That was fantastic. I resonated with it, a lot of it. It's just amazing to hear from children. It's always a real blessing when you get to interview them. What I have found is with people who are having contact, almost universally, they do have contact when they're very young. My heart goes out to them. Often they're not believed by their parents. So yeah, children are a big part of this. I just recently wrote this book, Schoolyard UFO Encounters, where UFOs are targeting schools. Half the cases involve elementary schools. These are very low-level sightings. 30% are landings or humanoids. So they're very interested in children. And I think partly because they are so open-minded, I think it is one of the ET's primary agendas, is evidenced by the case you cited, to wake people up on our planet. And this is absolutely what I see universally with people who are having contact. One guy, he was an electronics specialist in the Navy, part of the Hunter submarine squadron. Came back, had an encounter, came back and became a very successful dowser. People become very interested in hands-on healing and Reiki. They start having precognition, OBEs, out-of-body experiences that happened with me. I became completely, into UFOs, and at the same time, started having all kinds of out-of-body experiences. We are unlimited. This is the big message I think ETs are trying to wake us up to, the fact that we can levitate, we can do telepathy, we can visit the other side, we are interdimensional. So it was really heartwarming to hear, that case, and I do see this in a lot of children these days. One lady who had experiences, she was pregnant with twins, lost one in utero. She had a UFO landing next to her house, eventually did have the twin, which miraculously survived. And he's just this angel. He's got these huge blue eyes, white hair, super precognitive, super sensitive. So definitely one of these star child type of things. I think the ETs have been working very hard with our race to sort of uplift it, to make us more sensitive. They're very interested in our emotions and our ability to feel and all of these things. Past lives is a big part of this as well. So yeah, I think the nuts and bolts folks, God bless them. It's important, but you're missing out on really the best part of this.
What you're saying is nuts and bolts being the UFOs, the hardware, and the missing part being consciousness, the messages. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of researchers out there who focus, just, UFO hardware,
right?
Crash retrieval cases, alien bodies.
Yeah,
they want the proof. We have the proof. The proof is within the public arena already. We have conclusive evidence of UFO contact. But the real meat, the real juicy part of this is how we are being lifted up into another dimension. This, I do hear that there's going to be big changes of some kind. Are we moving to the fifth dimension? Is the veil between the worlds getting whole new consciousness? And but yeah, universally, experiences do tell me they feel the world is going to be a very different place. So I think that really is exactly what Mary's talking about. That the children are here to sort of usher that new age in, an age of, gosh, I hope, where greed and intolerance ends, and it's more of love and inclusivity.
Amen to that, and Aum as well, and Namaste. Any affirmation that we could put on there. I'm thinking about the mass sighting in Zimbabwe, Africa. School children out at recess, UFO comes down, beings float out, and the message they give these children to take back to the adults is twofold: practice love and stop trashing the planet. How are these? What other themes do the rest of you heard coming from the mouths of babes, as it were?
That's definitely a number one message about the environment. When people are taken on board a craft, often, even as children, they're taken to the engine room, which I find fascinating because this is not uncommon. And the ETs explain very clearly how they fly their craft, how they power it. It's usually some version of electromagnetism or something along those lines. And in a number of cases, these people come back and they become an electronics specialist. One guy with no high school education, starts making patents for electromagnetic engines. Another guy tried to create this perpetual motion device and did successfully. It spun and spun and spun for like 3 or 4 weeks. Just bicycle wheels and magnets, he said. The counter-rotating magnet theme turns up quite a bit. So yeah, being taken to the engine room is one I hear a lot.
And that's amazing because in traditional school, Western school, children are thought to have a very limited capacity for knowledge. And I always found, as a child, I felt the opposite was true: unlimited capacity for knowledge. In my case, I was a sponge. And just like Kathy in Mary's case report, they were holding me back. And I would imagine each one of us here in this forum feels much the same way, that school was not serving us well, and that the real education comes from independent research into the outside world, but also this very important consciousness component of inward seeking. That's where all of us seem to be going with this. Every UFO researcher is just like what Preston said. We know the hardware is real. We know there's ETs. Now let's get down to figuring out why they want to communicate with us, those that do. And it's all about uplifting our species, going to some new vibrational rate, even if that means just being nicer to each other. So it's such a series of rabbit holes. One thing leads to another, leads to another. Ginger, have you met indigo children in your travels?
I have not, but I'm definitely interested in this idea. And in my work, I work with kids a lot. I'm getting deeper into serving the ADHD and autism spectrum and cerebral palsy and Down syndrome groups of kids. And I'm going to be keeping some of, what I'm learning here tonight in mind as I get further into that, because I think that it all ties in.
Yeah, going on that vein, I do see autism and various spectrums of, different consciousness in UFO contact cases. So I find that very interesting. When Mary brought that up, I'm like, yeah, definitely have heard that before.
Mary, I'm just curious, and I'm sorry, but how many of these kids that you have talked to are frightened by their experiences? The proportion of frightened versus not frightened?
On an overview, I would say most are actually quite comfortable. A lot depends on the parents and how the parents are with this. And many are worried maybe there's something that may harm them or in some way, because they've been scared when they had experience, because they didn't understand it, or it was denied by their parents who say, oh, it's your imagination. So they were worried about doing the right thing. The child will pick up that and pick up what the parent is actually saying. When in fact, if the parent is open enough, then the child then can start exploring this, and they'll talk about being on spacecraft, learning a whole range of things. And that's, cosmology, learning quantum physics, for example, learning about the real origin of the species. And I remember the 8-year-old saying to me that when he went up on board craft with a couple of his school friends, they would be in a group of his school friends and other children. Some of the children, he said, didn't look quite human. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, their eyes were different, although they were humanoid. But he explained how he was taught how to use his consciousness to create things and to explore things, you know, and he would say they'd project things. And he said it was very complex. So I remember saying to him, when you say complex, can you tell me some of the complex things that you were taught? And he looked at me, this 8-year-old, and said, no, it's too complex for you. So there you go. But interestingly, I said, did you talk to the 2 school friends that went up with you on the craft? And he got very agitated and said, no, and no. And his mother said, he said, Mum wouldn't let me. And I talked to the mother, and she said, very apologetically, I was afraid that if he started talking about this at school, that he would have problems, or, you know, that there could be some issues that would come up when you start talking about learning things on spacecraft, you know, with beings and whatever, could have been a problem. But it wasn't a problem for a 12-year-old I spoke to, who told me that in the classroom, she's got a grey ET with her. And when the teacher says something that's inaccurate or not accurate in terms of information, the ET would say to her, that's not correct. This is what you need to know. And I said, did you ever talk about that to anyone else? She said, no, only Mum, because Mum understands.
Wise child.
They are all interacting with these beings, and as long as that it's healthy and it's balanced and it's useful, they're fine with it. They can't understand why people are afraid, because it's family. You know, as the 8-year-old said, the mantis beings are his family. They're his ancestors. He's going back to being a mantis when he passes on. So that is their comfort with it and their acknowledgement of their star heritage. And this is what I'm finding with a lot of the children. To them, this is the reality. What's the problem? And one of the ADHD older generations that I spoke to, a ufologist in Hong Kong called Neil Gold, told me he hadn't realized he was ADHD as a child, but he said he always saw the complexities of the universe in a completely different way, it seemed, to everyone else. And he wrote the book Close Encounters of the ADHD Kind, and he retranslated ADHD as always dialed into higher dimensions. So I think that's a pretty good way of explaining the ADHD, that we medicate to slow down enough so we can program them into our limited and limiting 3D consensus reality.
Wow. Wow. Just wow. Well, I can't believe 2 hours has flown by. And by the way, viewers, our stream was interrupted about halfway through this 2-hour broadcast of Taboo Topics with Jean Broida and guests Ginger Routh, Mary Rodwell, and Preston Dennett. So this is part 2 of that stream. And we have a part 1 as well floating out there in the ethers. And at this point, it's time to wind down our cavalcade of panelists. I've had a really great time. Mary, tell us how viewers can contact you and just brag a little bit on yourself a little bit.
Look, I always say now, go on Google and look up Mary Rodwell, and you'll see my website, which is acern.com.au or maryrodwell.com.au. The Alien Lady is another one I'm quite well known as these days. But yes, just there's lots of YouTube presentations as well, that you can actually find me, and different presentations on all of this that we've spoken about today.
What about conferences coming up?
The next one that I'm going to be speaking about is Contact in the Desert in California at the end of May. I've just done the Conscious Living Expo in LA, actually, that's just passed. But that's the next big one where I'm coming to the US.
Absolutely fabulous. Anything else you'd care to add?
What would I like to say to everyone is that the wonderful thing with this, and I agree absolutely with Preston, that when people say, you know, what does this mean? I believe this means that we are going to achieve our full potential with our connection to these beings. And I don't think there's anything to fear whatsoever. The only thing to fear is fear, isn't it?
Well said indeed. Ginger Routh, how can people contact you? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, if people in the St. Louis area are interested in meeting other like-minded individuals, we meet the second Monday of every month in Webster Groves, which is a suburb of St. Louis. People can email me at gingerwatch@yahoo.com. That's GINGERWATCH@yahoo.com. We don't have social media. A lot of the people that meet in our rooms actually don't like to use cell phones or the internet at all. So this is hardcore face-to-face, low brow, but it's a great way to raise consciousness and share ideas.
Do you like for people to email you?
Yes, email me is the best way to get in touch.
And what's that address one more time, please?
gingerwatch@yahoo.com.
Have I been mispronouncing your last name?
No, it's not my full name. My email is ginger and then the word WATCH.
WATCH, a watch, Ginger Watch at, and what's your domain?
Yahoo.com.
Oh, Yahoo. Perfect. Well, thanks so much. And Preston Dennett.
Hey, thanks, Jean. It's been a huge honor talking with you guys, Ginger, Mary, Jean. Really appreciate it. I think this is a very important subject, UFOs. I think the environmental crisis, the economic crisis, and the energy crisis could all be solved if we just release this ET technology, which we do have in our possession. I think we're going to be looking at open official contact. I think the disclosure movement will bust this subject wide open. So it's a great time to be alive on Earth. You can find out more in me and my research on my website, which is prestondennett.weebly.com. You just Google my name, it should take you there. You can contact me through my website. Also, all my books are there. Love hearing from witnesses, whether they've got a question, a comment, or a story they'd like to share. I'll be speaking at UFO Con in San Francisco this month, actually, February 22nd, 20th, around there, third weekend. I hope to see a lot of people up there. And yeah, thanks again. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. This is a real thrill for me too. I am Jean Broida, host of Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. I have written a book, Unknown Objects, the Top 10 U.S. UFO Cases, available on Amazon. Well, with this screen here, you can't see it. That's okay. Head over to Amazon. It's an introduction to 10 very famous cases in UFO history. Great for someone new to the topic, or even a seasoned investigator was probably going to find some details that had escaped them before. There's just so much to all of this. I do write on a daily basis for several publications. I write conspiracy articles at thedailyconspiracy.com as Lightworker111. I'm at dimwit.politics and some other places as well. Please visit my website, lightwork111.com. There's a link there to my book. And I'm starting up this new website for the show, tabootopics.life/shows, which if you're watching this in real time, you followed to get here in the first place. So thanks so much. All of you panelists. A show like this just can't happen without the valuable information that each of you has brought. And I'm just so grateful that you could carve out a couple of hours on a Sunday night and share what you know, the extraordinary things that you know, with us here in the group and everyone out in the universes. It's my real belief that there are no coincidences, and that anyone hearing us, whether it's in real time or in the future as a download, has a reason to be there. There's a purpose behind this. I have to believe that that's part of the synchronicity component for me. So that said, anybody else want to say anything in just a few seconds, because we're about to take this out for the night? I think we're all good. And that is our take on it, viewers. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. It's been my pleasure to have Ginger Routh, Mary Rodwell, Preston Dennett here today with me. Thanks so much. See you next week. Over and out.